Sainte Marie du Mont was taken relatively easily and rapidly by the 82nd 505th Regiment, but had to be defended afterwards. Sainte Marie du Mont took longer to capture after sporadic fighting throughout the day, but once taken, was held definitively. Several notable incidents happened in and around Sainte Marie du Mont. In the spring of '44, there was urinal in the town square at Sainte Marie du Mont. It was a steel screen on legs, and the town painter was in there doing what you do. Town painter as in painter decorator. And there were two German officers up the top of the tower looking at the map, and suddenly the wind blew the map off the parapet, so the Germans came down as fast as they could, and the painter was still in the urinal. They asked him if they'd seen anything. He said, "No, I haven't seen anything." And he went home, and then he got the map out the back of his pants. He seen it coming down, and he grabbed it and gone back in the urinal to act innocent. And it was a map of all the gun batteries in the area. Of course, that was handed on to the resistance. Sainte Marie du Mont is famous for John Steele, who got caught on the church tower. The paratrooper nearly did the same thing here, but managed to miss the church. His name was Buck Rogers. He landed, and with two other men, he knocked on the door to ask where they were. The man who answered them told them that they were in Sainte Marie du Mont. They asked where the Germans were. He waved his hand over his head to say, "Everywhere." Buck Rogers thought it'd be a good idea to go up the church tower and shoot any Germans he saw in the town. Once he was up there, he found it wasn't easy to tell the difference between a German or a paratrooper. He did see a German shoot the paratrooper, and the German made the mistake of leaning over the body to pick his pockets. Rogers shot him. Later, he saw a Kugelwagen coming up the road from Utah Beach. He shot the driver and the passenger. Ambrose Ali landed on the roof of that house across there, and he slid down off the roof. Some Germans who'd been sheltering under these trees grabbed him. They pushed him against a wall. They were going to shoot him. Now, he had his eyes closed. He was praying hard. He heard some shots, but he didn't feel anything. He opened his eyes, and the Germans had been shot by some paratroopers, so he'd had a lucky escape. Colonel Sink landed in the middle of Drop Zone C as per plan. His first question was, "Where are my men?" He should have had 1,000 men to secure Sainte Marie du Mont and open up exits 1 and 2 from Utah Beach. He had 75 men, mostly his HQ staff. He marched to Couleville to set up his headquarters. Soon after they arrived, his HQ CO, Captain Peters, said he knew where there was a sniper. He went out to get him, but he was killed with a bullet in the head. This is Couleville, a mile west of Sainte Marie du Mont. This is where Colonel Sink set up his first command post. Winters and some men from the Easy Company spent the night of the 6th here. In the HBO series, it was shown as a small town, but it's actually just a farmhouse. Colonel Sink later had a command post at Angoville and then Saint-Côme-du-Mont. Just about a mile from Colonel Sink's command post was Iville, and that had been earmarked for General Taylor's command post. This is the Le Corday farm at Iville. The Pathfinder, having set up his beacon, found his way here and was shown a bed on the upper floor where he could rest. He was rudely awakened by a soldier saying, "Get out, this is for General Taylor." Now, General Taylor landed near Sainte Marie du Mont and spent most of the morning of the 6th near Poupeville, but this was his headquarters. Half a mile down the lane to the right was the Chateau of Colombière. That was used as a hospital. Doc Lage, who had first had an aid station in Holdy, moved here on the 7th. On the 9th, it was bombed by the Germans in spite of a big cross on the ground. Perhaps its proximity to Taylor's HQ brought attention to it. 80 men were killed in the attack. Following the road to the left, we come to landing zone E for gliders. The 101st second in command was General Pratt. He hadn't validated his jump training, so came in by glider. His men, wanting to protect him, put steel plates in the side of the Waco. Pratt spent the flight sat in the jeep that the glider carried. The pilot, Lieutenant Murphy, made a textbook landing in this field, but with the extra weight and the morning dew, the glider slid 200 yards into a tree. The pilot had both legs broken. He could see the co-pilot was dead. He turned to look at Pratt, who seemed to be asleep in the jeep, but he was dead. This is one of the few true events shown in Saving Private Ryan. Captain Miller and his men come across this glider in the film. About half a mile down the road behind me that way was the battery of Holdie, where there were 4 105mm guns. Doc Lage, missed drop from the 502nd Regiment, set up an A station here at Holdie. Against orders, he'd brought a camera with him, and he made a very useful photographic account of what happened in his region. Many men dropped in this area, more than intended, as 502nd men like Doc Lage had been dropped here 10 miles south of their designated zone. Some paratroopers were captured by the men of the battery, and they attached thermite grenades to their thighs after hanging them up. This is probably what Donald Burgett saw and mentioned in his book Curé as he made his way from Ravenville to Verville. Across the road from Holdie was a gun battery that hadn't been pinpointed by intelligence. 105mm guns were ranged along that hedge and aimed at exit number 4 around Pouperville. Men were attacking the battery, and Captain Patch of the 506 brought a group of men from Couleville. The men went to each end of the hedge where the guns were and started moving inwards in a pincer movement. Jim Stevenson fired bazooka rounds at the Germans and then shouted, "Come on, all you've got to do is kill the rest of them." Colonel Sink sent a message from Couleville to keep the guns so they could use them. But by the time the message got there, only one had survived. With the guns out of action, the men started moving towards Sainte Marie du Mont, which is behind me. Captain Patch, just for good measure, got one of the men to bore sight the gun at the church, just in case there was a sniper or an artillery observer up there. Their first round missed. They fired the second round, and that hit the belfry. There was in fact a sniper up the church. It was an American, Buck Rogers, who was mentioned earlier. Fortunately, he wasn't hurt. Doc Lage was now treating Americans and Germans. Doc Lage had found a jeep destined for the 82nd Deputy Commander. He changed the markings on it and used it till the military police checked the number and confiscated it. A C-47 towing a glider was hit and was trying to make a forced landing. The glider was still in tow. The glider hit the hedge and flipped over to land on its back. Most of the men were killed. Doc Lage came with some medics to treat the survivors and took some photos. This one was taken by an army photographer. The paratrooper, who was no doubt a huntsman, was crouched behind the pump which is behind me. He had his rifle in the crook of his arm. He was picking off Germans coming through the town. He shot at least 10. There was a sort of Wild West shootout by this memorial. There was a German and an American passing it, each side. They suddenly saw each other. They fired simultaneously. The American was dead. The German was wounded. He was taken to the aid station, and the American doctor saved his life. From 1942, the Germans introduced the obligatory work service, or the STO, Service Travail Obligatoire, and the young men had to come to the town hall, which was the commandature, and they'd get their orders for what they had to do. Some of the Germans tried to get on with the French people. There was one German soldier who was particularly nasty. Everybody hated him. When the paratroopers were falling, he set up a machine gun in the road down there, going down to Carentan. Then he disappeared down that road to the barracks they had down there. Later in the afternoon, the people were happy to see him coming back into town as a prisoner. Down the lane next to the town hall, and to the right, about half a mile down there, is Breacourt Manor. That will be the subject of another video. So tap subscribe and the bell to be informed. During the morning, the sexton was asked by two Germans who were on duty in the church to hide them, and he just turned their back on them and left. Later in the afternoon, the cleaner was sweeping up in the church and she heard somebody sneezing in the confessional. She came out to tell the American military police. They went in and found the two Germans hiding there. Walter Talk's plane was approaching the 501st drop zone. Last thing he remembers was somebody saying, 1 minute to drop zone. He jumped, but some connector links must have hit the back of his helmet and dented it and knocked him out. And two buddies found him on the floor, babbling incoherently, so they tied a rope round him and pulled him around, and if they got near some Germans, they would cover his mouth with their hands. Around dawn, he came back to his normal self again. General Taylor dropped near Sainte Marie du Mont, and by dawn he hadn't seen any 506. It was their job to clear exit number 1 and 2. So he decided to make sure it was done himself. He chose to come to Poopville in person. General Taylor's group was top-heavy with officers. He remarked, never in the history of warfare has so few been commanded by so many. He met Colonel Ewell of the 501st and instructed him to clear up Poopville, because Ewell was a quite competent officer. There were about 70 Germans protecting the town, and they put up a stiff resistance. Ewell was peering round a corner and a bullet just pinged off his helmet. But Lieutenant Nathan Marks wasn't so lucky. He was killed doing the same thing. Just at these crossroads, Major Lawrence Leger was hit in the thigh by a bullet. He was right in the middle of the road. A medic, Hull, he ran out to treat him, and he was killed by a bullet in the chest, even though he had a Red Cross armband on. The Germans finally gave way and tried to escape eastwards towards the bridge. Just then, Captain Maybury, with the 8th Regiment of the 4th Division, who'd landed on Utah Beach, was approaching from the other side of the bridge. He saw the Germans coming. Realising they were pursued by paratroopers, he held up an orange cloth on a pole to show that they were friendly troops. So the Germans were taken prisoner, and the first link up between the paratroopers and the incoming troops had happened at 11:30. German soldiers lived in this house, like in many others. The window of one of the rooms was fitted with iron bars and used as a jail for miscreant German soldiers. One prisoner took advantage of the confusion during the invasion to escape. His body was found during the day, dressed in civilian clothes. It's a mystery as to what happened to him. This famous photo was taken on the 7th. You can see the eagle arm patch on the men from the 101st. The 3 girls are interested in these young men that have just fallen out the sky. The girl nearest the camera married a paratrooper. The GC-70 in the photo was put on the side of the pump to show people that they should go to Sainte Marie du Mont that way. And see that road is always called D70. The The GC-70 was visible until a few years ago, just faintly. It's completely disappeared now. D-Day was Tuesday, the 6th of June, and so Sunday was the 11th. There was a service held in the church and it was full of soldiers. Utah Beach was used to bring in supplies and men right up to November, and most of them came through here. If you like these videos, you can support the channel by commenting, sharing, subscribing, or even on Patreon.